Hello, I'm Tiffany Thomas with the Oracle Applications Users Group. Welcome everyone to this session of OAUG e-learning, the FSG and Discoverer Alternative. Before we get started, I would like to go over a couple housekeeping items. We will be on mute throughout the presentation. If you would like to ask a question, please type it into the question box in your control panel at any time. Once the presentation has concluded, I will read back the question so the presenter can respond. We are recording this session. It will be available on the OUG website later today. I would like to introduce your presenters, Glennon Andrews and Kevin Gibson with Global Software, Inc.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for the introduction. I'm Glennon Andrews with Global Software. I'm an Excel automation advisor. We're going to today show you our tool, Spreadsheet Server. Kevin will walk you through a demonstration of that. So we are excited to let you know about just some of the basic functionality our tool can do, and then also how it is an alternative to FSGs and Discoverer. So in my role as an Excel automation advisor, I'm actually in the sales side of the house. So basically doing that, I am the main, one of the faces of the company and a main contact. So if there are questions directly related to the presentation, some of those will go through Tiffany today, but afterwards, feel free to contact me. I think we'll post my contact information as well at the end. Kevin Gibson, who's also on the line, he'll be doing most of the heavy lifting on the call and actually walking through the product presentation. Kevin's a CPA. He's a former controller and a former financial reporting manager, and he actually was a user of Spreadsheet Server in his previous role. So he'll talk about how they actually used that with Oracle previously, and how some of these examples that he'll be showing today were actually applied in the real world for him at his previous company. So a little bit about Global Software, I'd like to cover that quickly. We were founded in 1973, and our headquarters are in Raleigh, North Carolina. We also have sales and support offices in New York and outside of Seattle, as well as remote employees across the country. If you do become a client and your offices are in the US, you're going to reach somebody 24/7 here in the States. We do also have international offices in the UK and in Perth, Australia, for round-the-clock worldwide support. We are an Oracle Gold partner. We're also a Microsoft Gold partner, and we're the #1 provider of Excel-based automation tools for the worldwide marketplace. We have over 4,500 customers in over 120 countries. So quickly, I'd like to just share a few quotes that we've gotten from some customers. We actually did a survey last year, and surveying hundreds of customers, we found out that Lasco Distributors, for instance, was saving over 300 hours per year with Spreadsheet Server, and many of our customers were actually saving over 50 to 300 hours. The majority of them were. So huge time savings to this that we're going to share with you today. But essentially, if you did want to speak to one of our customers, we have lots that would love to have a conversation to tell you about how they're using the tool and how they've experienced some of those time savings firsthand. So what we're actually going to see today, we're going to take a look at our tool, Spreadsheet Server. It's an Excel add-in. There's no hardware associated with the tool. But what we'll allow you to do is once it's installed, you'll get an expanded ribbon of functionality that Kevin will cover today. And you're not going to have to copy and paste data anymore. You're not going to have to export data out of Oracle. You're going to be working in Excel. It's formula driven, so your reports become refreshable. So you will, this one click of a button, you can refresh your reports, you can change parameters, and you can drill down even from within Excel. And it allows you to use Excel functionality to really build out those reports and get to your data in an easy way to do reporting. So Kevin will speak to some of that general functionality, as I said, and to how it can be used to replace FSG and Discover. There's also a distribution component within the tool that allows you to build a distribution list and then send those reports out with one click of a button, or even schedule them to be sent out. So we'll cover that as well. So at this time, I'll hand it over to Kevin, and he'll show you why our motto on the left is start in Excel, stay in Excel.
All right, thanks, Glennon. Again, my name is Kevin Gibson. I'm going to walk you through the presentation. As Glennon had mentioned, I am a former user. It's going on about 10 years now, 6 as a customer, 4 within the organization. And I actually used the product in the Oracle space. So I'm going to be able to bring a lot of the discussion to the table, a lot of the terminology that you guys are using today, that you folks are using today in your organization. We're certainly going to cover FSGs. We'll talk about the version. We're certainly going to show you how all of that functionality will now be inside of Excel. We'll talk about some different components. I also want to mention we're not going to get to everything today. We're not going to be able to cover every single aspect of what our product provides. We're going to cover a lot of that. Certainly, if you see interest in the product, you want to dive a little deeper, you want to focus on something specific, just let us know. As we mentioned, we'll put Glennon's contact information up on the screen to conclude the presentation. And certainly feel free to submit any questions via the Q&A box within the GoToMeeting itself. Now, initially, what you see on your screen is an Excel spreadsheet. 95% of what I will show you today is Excel functionality. We're going to talk about how we leverage live data directly from your Oracle system, pulling it into Excel. I mentioned your Oracle system. That's not the only limits as far as data is concerned. We ultimately can connect to anything because we're focused on FSG and Discoverer today. That's where our main focus will be. But ultimately understand multiple data sources being pulled by our product is absolutely well within the functions of what you'll see here with our product. Now, what is Spreadsheet Server? How does it work? Where does it sit? Because this is Excel-based product, we are just an add-in to Excel. So if you'll look at the top of the screen, you will notice a new ribbon labeled just that, Spreadsheet Server. And to the left are all the other ribbons that you know and use today. So you'll notice the functionality that Excel provides currently is built into the templates. I just want to make sure you understand that you do not lose a single Excel function, but what you gain is live data. The ability to pull information into your spreadsheets, combining that with Excel, really leads to any report can be created in the format and the function that you want it to be in. Now, we'll start out with a GL type report, more like an FSG is going to function for you. I'll show you how to convert an FSG report. It's built into the product. Once you convert, it's always converted. You can share that report with any other individual within the organization, internal or external. We will conclude our presentation today with that distribution component that Glennon had mentioned. To get the ribbon to appear, it's a simple install. We won't get too much into that today. No, it's about 90 minutes. There's no additional hardware, no server, no data warehouse. This is a direct connection. This connection is assigned by user, is a named user license. Therefore, we can match up with the security, the roles and responsibilities that you already have in Oracle today. Therefore, users cannot get to data inside of these templates that they couldn't get to as if they were logged directly into Oracle itself. Again, full security that follows the user, not the report. So this template that you see on the screen, it has a few components that relate directly to that ribbon. Everything else will be, again, just Excel functionality. The first will be a set of parameters. Now, the parameters in this template are located over here on the right-hand side. We are not limited to these few selections, but these are the ones that were used to create this template. Those parameters drive the data. So you'll notice over here on the left-hand side is all of my financial information. Now, you can modify this report like you do Excel today. If you want to add new columns and rows and you want to change the descriptions, you absolutely can. And if you want to combine that with any other Excel function, as I mentioned, absolutely, just take advantage. Now, the idea is once they're set up, they're always set up. So now modifying information is very simple. Make a parameter selection. You can either type right in the cell. In this case, I want to see a different department. I want to see Department 420. And by hitting enter, you will notice the template will go through a recalculation. All that simply means is that it's updating. If you would like to use a wildcard or a consolidation feature, if you will, we do have this asterisk symbol that will allow you to do that. As a standalone, that will allow you to consolidate all of your departments into the template. So again, just in a few easy steps, I've now looked at a couple of different departments. If I want to change the month or the year or the company number, absolutely I can. So again, the idea of these templates now is they're going to take over where your FSGs have been completed. We're going to show you how to convert those over, and now this is what those FSGs will look like on an everyday basis. Now, inside of this report, if I click on a balance, you're going to notice there's a formula. That's component number 2 that's in the spreadsheet that relates to Spreadsheet Server. is actually linked to the parameters, which is ultimately linked into the Oracle database itself. Now that formula, we don't ask you to memorize or understand it. We're going to show you how it gets inserted into Excel, and certainly how the FSG conversion automatically does that. Now the formula drives the additional functions that are located on the ribbon, such as the drill down option. So if you want to dive deeper into that approximate $1.3 million repair balance, simply select the cell, select the magnifying glass, and now you have additional information. Now within the drill downs, you will be able to perform some additional functionality. If you want to sort the data, notice there's a little option tab over here on the left-hand side. Just going to pin this out here for a second. So you can see some of the filtering options. Remember, I wildcarded the department. I want to see all those grouped together. Simply select that option, and you'll notice it will group them by department with descriptions and combining balances. If you want to see it by account number, sub-account, company number, just select what you need. Again, it will go through those groupings automatically, and the full detail option will allow you just to start in the original panel. There are some other options. You want to export that out into an Excel spreadsheet, PDF document, absolutely. Again, dive deeper into those areas on a separate presentation just for someone who may want to focus on a certain area. Now, within the drill downs, you're not limited. You're not stuck at just the balance level. You can continue to keep drilling through the information. Now, if I want to dive deeper into any balance on this template, that little black arrow is my active line. I can move it to any line in the spreadsheet. I'm in the drill down by simply selecting it. But by double clicking on it, it will take me into the next level, which is the journal information. Now let me unpin this here so you can see a fuller screen. But now we're talking about additional information. We're looking at data now outside of the balances. I could have selected more than one balance, could have returned more than one journal transaction, but ultimately I can even go further. If I double click on this line, it will allow me to use what we call as a query capability. I don't have to have a separate ribbon to do that. I don't have to install separate functionality in order to dive deeper into the subledger. Spreadsheet Server encompasses all of that under one install. So ultimately, I can go right into the AP subledger and take a look at the vendor information that made up that transaction. I can even go into the invoice images if you have that information stored electronically. So the idea is to not have to leave Excel in order to create your information, or in order to analyze it, start in Excel, stay in Excel. So we're looking at a report that's already built. The formulas are here, the parameters are here. You have FSGs you would like to create, you would like to or convert, and you'd like to create your own reports, which is going to lead me to my next part of the conversation, which is how do you build and convert information. Just want to pause again, make sure questions, comments, or thoughts, please submit those through the chat feature. We will be monitoring those and certainly answer those as we go through the presentation today. But at this point, I want to show you how to build a report. I'm going to show you how to do an FSG conversion, and all that happens within the Build a Template feature. Now, by clicking on the next tab, note it is Sheet 1. Make sure you understand this just is an Excel spreadsheet. Being a Microsoft partner, all the different versions of Excel will work all the way through Office 365. I'm using version 2016 here today. If the users are on different versions internally, that's okay. Externally, Spreadsheet Server, it doesn't require a conversion process in order for them to use the spreadsheet. All they have to do is open it. Now this tab, this is the worst case scenario, as I mentioned, because I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to use the Build a Template and insert a formula. I also can make that FSG conversion option right inside the Build a Template button, located right in the center of the ribbon. Now by clicking on the Build a Template, you will see this panel that appears on your screen. Now on the left-hand side, there are some different formulas that do different things. There's a formula that says GL value. There's a formula or formulas that say query. We'll cover both of these. The GL relates to FSGs. The query is going to relate more to your Discover conversion. Now by selecting the GL formula, you'll notice parameters will populate in the template. Now these parameters relate directly to the system that you're connected to, whether it's Oracle or some other connection. Again, this is my Oracle connection. Within the parameters that I have available to me, they might be a little bit different on your system. You might have different segments in your GL. You might have more than 5. You may have less. There's no minimum. There's no maximum. And can be rest assured that we will read all of your available parameters off of your general ledger as off of any other module that you're using today. Now, the parameters that are here, all you have to do is insert them. Now, you'll even notice one of my options are an FSG conversion. So let me walk you through the process, and we'll conclude here. Where do you want to insert this formula? Select any of the tabs within the workbook. It defaults to the tab that you're on. Balance types. A stands for actual. B stands for budget. If you'd like to pull in your budgets, forecasts, and plans, just select from the drop-down list. All of those will be available. So you can toggle back and forth. Some of you may be using Hyperion and/or SmartView as an add-in where your budget is sitting. We absolutely can pull those in side by side. We have customers today using both products. The year, self-explanatory here. That's just a year of data. You can scroll back. You can type right in the cell the data you would like to see. Formatting, periods, quarters, year-to-date, life-to-date, and ranges. And then the period just simply represents the month that you would like to start with. A lot of our customers, not all, may be working in different currencies. They may want to see how the translation approach works with inside the Oracle application. So we can deal with entered transactions, translated information, or multiple currencies in the same template. Again, that's just a parameter selection here. Certainly toggling back and forth between different currencies. And as I mentioned, because we're reading the roles and responsibilities of every user who uses the product, you may have access to different ledgers. You can have different ledgers in every column if you would want to. Now, on the FSG side, to do an FSG conversion, you would check this box. You would select from any and all of the FSGs that you have inside of your system today. They automatically appear. We read them. You can convert them. You can convert all of them. I personally converted over 160 when we implemented this product, again, over almost 10 years ago in my previous organization. So understand, once they're converted, they're always converted. And then you, because they're in Excel, you can apply as much of the Excel features as you want that you couldn't previously do just using the current FSG structure and format. And remember that the formula has the drill down built into it. So that automatically follows the template. Even when it's converted, that drill down is automatically there. I'll build a report and then we'll do a conversion. Now the segments that are listed here, I have 5 of them. As I mentioned, you may have more or less, but just to insert those into the spreadsheet, you have a formatting option of row versus column. Now you can change that preference once you're in the template. Simple things like copy and paste will automatically do that for you. Now the asterisk symbol defaults, so you can insert that into the spreadsheet. You can just start inserting information and filtering, sort of like an account inquiry screen. So if you want to look at Company 1, Department 410, and Account 7400, you absolutely can. There's a range option that allows you to be able to insert information on the right-hand side. So I'm going to pull in Account 7400 through 7600 into one combined total. There is an option for a line description. So where it says template account line, you simply can just type in what you need, such as repairs, and create that category. Now by hitting the insert button, you will notice there's that formula. Here are all the parameters, and now you can just copy and paste into additional columns. So if you want to modify information, you absolutely can. If you would like to pull in quarter data, and you want to pull in year to date, and you want to drop in just a variance column, absolutely. You already know how to do that today. We allow you to continue to do that. Just as I copied from columns, I can copy to rows, and then you can start being more specific. If you want to pull in all accounts that start with a 7 with the wildcard, you can. Again, even when the FSG conversion happens, you can modify all the parameters right in the template, and you'll get an instant result of whatever information that you're trying to group together. You want to drill down, you can. If you want to change to a different department, if you would want to change to a different year, all you have to do is type that right in the template to be able to do that. You can do the ranges in the template. You can even modify and say, I want to pull in Department 410, 430, 420, and drilling down into this option, just to show you that it's still working, I can filter just based off of those 3 criteria. So that's how you insert a formula into a template. Now that's if you want to start from scratch. But certainly we want to point out the FSG conversion. That is part of the topic of here today, is the Discover Conversion and FSG Conversion. So let me jump to a tab that I've simply just renamed FSG Converter. There's nothing particular about this tab other than, it's just another Excel tab. Now I'm going to go back to that same build a template, and because I've already walked you through the parameters, I can skip over most of those and go right to the FSG. but I need to be able to select the valid date of data. There's got to be something in my system that I want to convert. I can change the periods and the formats. Again, I can set all of that up, but notice when I click on the FSG side, the segments all go to a grayed out area. I can't change those because those are already built into the FSG, so I can't modify that. Now I can modify that information in the template, but right now that's predefined in the report. Now, if you want to go through and filter off some information, all you have to do is find a report to convert, such as a balance sheet, and that's really the simple process of doing that. Limited selections there, and now by hitting insert, you will see behind the scenes all of the information from that FSG are now being populated into my template. Now here in just a few seconds, I'm going to have that FSG spreadsheet. You'll notice all of the information, even if I scroll to the right a little bit, all of the parameters that are being used, I can close that up a little bit. Even parent-child hierarchies that you have built into your system, we recognize those. We can use those and calculate balances. So if you're not sure what account structure is making up a particular account balance or category, use the hierarchies that you already have today. If you modify that definition inside of Oracle, we still will pick that up automatically, and it will continue to recalculate based off of any changes that you've made. Now again, once it's in Excel, it's converted. You don't have to reconvert. You don't have to do anything else. You want to start driving this or changing or adding more columns. Again, now you have that flexibility like I was mentioning or showing you in that original template that we started with. So if you want to start creating a rolling 12-month balance sheet, if you will, you just start using all the Excel features and functions that you already know today. Remember, I did 160 of those. That's a much easier process of using them in Excel as opposed to going in the row sets and the column sets, finding out that you've got a parameter in there wrong. You didn't put a negative sign on the account. It didn't pull in correctly. You didn't add them right. Rerun it only to find out you have to go through that process again. Converting them, making the changes right here in Excel on the fly will give you those instant results. And you'll get to see and drill down automatically into the details to make sure it's calculating exactly the way that you want it to. That's the FSG conversion. Once they're here, you can have all the reports in the same workbook if you want to. You can create as many. There's no requirement, no minimum, no maximum, how many are in a workbook. All I would recommend is that you convert them based on type. So put all your financials together, maybe operational reports, and those kind of related information in separate workbooks, but it's certainly not a requirement, just a recommendation. Again, pause here. I just want to check in with Glennon. Questions or comments that may have been submitted. That's the FSG side. That's sort of one of the big topics we wanted to discuss before we move into Discover conversion and ultimately closing with distribution. Questions or comments through the chat box? Glenn, have any yet?
Kevin, I did receive one, and you may have covered it, but it's always good to repeat it. I had a question regarding the server and what's required there for the tool.
No, that's perfect. No server component at all. Again, no data warehouse. There's no cube environment. So from the IT structural standpoint, there's no additional hardware that needs to be purchased. This is a direct connection to the database, pulling in the information. We don't even install anything on the Oracle application side. We just connect to the database itself directly. That connection now drives the ribbon in the Excel worksheet. Each time you open Excel, the ribbon will appear. Users, each person who wants to be able to do everything that I talk about here today will have to have one of our license levels. We have more than one. Probably won't get too far into that today. I may mention some of those different license types, but they will need a license to have live data. We'll talk about distribution and how that can eliminate that need. But again, there's no additional hardware, no server, just a ribbon. It's software, download, plug and play. In 90 minutes or less, you can be doing exactly what I'm showing you here.
Perfect. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Again, submit those questions. So Glenn and I certainly will address and answer all those for you. I'm going to take one more step into the product, and we're going to talk about Discover reports and then ultimately Discover conversion. So a Discover report, what does it look like in a spreadsheet? Now, if I click on this tab here called Account Inquiry, this actually is one of the many templates that we have out there that we share with our customers, but this is a converted Discover report. This is what it looks like in Excel. You're going to see a lot of the same functionality, whether it's a Discover report, a GL report, or just an ad hoc query or report that someone has built. Again, I'll sort of describe all of that as we walk through this. But this report, again, once it's established, it's always established. You'll know the colors in here and the fancy little run buttons that we just used from a macro perspective to make it just a little bit easier for those novice Excel users. It's not a requirement, but it certainly makes it easier for that individual, someone who doesn't understand Excel. But the idea here now is that you have a template that is live and refreshable in a spreadsheet. Now, reports can be multi-use, if you will. If you'll notice some of the different headers on line 33 here, particularly I want to point out column J, where we're using a vendor, customer, and employee name. So this report can not only pull AP, it can pull AR, and eventually even payroll information. It just depends on what you're hitting. That's going to be driven by the parameters that you use and filter on. So in this case, I'm looking at an account number, but I can filter on any parameter that's available, and these are not the only parameters you can use. But what I want to show you is that if I modify one of those, I hit the run button, you're going to notice a sort of a multi-step process. I'm going to show you what that means in a few moments. Well, what it's doing is it's going back out to our Oracle system. It walked through that multi-step process to go out and give me all information related to account 7410. Notice even the vendor names, all the related AP information. If I scroll to the right, some other data here, vendor numbers, the source comments, down the list, whatever it may be that you need, we can grab it and now pull it into Excel. Now, the Discover conversation and a operational type report, if you will, when I say operational, anything outside of the GL, this may have GL components in it, but it uses a little bit more functionality. We use what we call queries. Now, eventually, if you convert a Discover report, that will turn it into a query, and I'm going to show you what a query looks like in Excel. Now, in this particular example, we had a customer who was running this Discover report, and it was taking 4 hours. We've got it down to under 10 minutes using our capability and the way that we are able to pull information into a template. Now, you'll notice lines 1 through 23 are hidden, just to sort of show you the complexity of this report and how simple we've made it. There are well over 15 different queries being generated here. And if I scroll over just a little bit into the process area, you'll notice these are the different areas that we're hitting: payables, receivables, fixed assets, inventory, projects, manual journal entries that are being pulled in. You can even turn these on and off. If you don't want a particular query to run for a particular individual, all you have to do is plug them in as an N. Right now I've got them all set to yes, so it's touching all areas of information. So that's what a Discover conversion looks like. Now we're going to dive more into what a query is and how you get them, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like inside of an Excel template. Remember, they all have parameters and they'll all have formulas. And this also is a different way to build a report. The first one that I mentioned has drillable detail. Notice this one right here, I don't have to drill. I automatically have all that detail right inside my template. I'll show you when I go back to the build a template, that's just a different selection. It's called a query versus a GL formula.
Kevin, while you pause, I hope it's okay. I have a few additional that came in. Are you ready to answer them?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, I had the question, do we need a certain Excel version to be able to use Spreadsheet Server?
So our supported versions, if you will, or our Excel versions, follow the same line as Microsoft. We are the partner, we have a partner status with them. So what that means is you're going to use the same, we follow the same supported versions. I believe that's 2007 is the cutoff. Now that doesn't mean Spreadsheet Server won't work. That just simply means that it won't be supported by Microsoft if there happens to be any issues with it. Now, with that being said, all the way through Office 365, again, even if users are on different versions, that is absolutely okay with us. There's no conversion process. All they have to do is open the ribbon. We'll take care of all of that, all those different options for you.
Great. And another one, can we only convert FSGs? What about BI Publisher reports?
So BI Publisher reports, that's going to get more into the Discover conversion side. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that. We're going to use some different functions. Now, from the FSG conversion side, there is the automatic link as we showed you in the build the template. There's a few additional steps when it gets to Discover or maybe even the BI Publisher or other related query tools that are out there. We're going to speak about that as we get into this additional phase. Again, related more to Discover, but it's going to encompass more than just Discover.
And then can we use this tool to import data as well?
Absolutely, you can. Today's discussion was focused more on the converting FSGs and Discoverer reports, I should say. But notice up here on the right-hand side of the ribbon, we actually have a spreadsheet write back related directly to Oracle You'll notice we have some other, even JD Edwards and some others. So just to name a few, on the Oracle side, more specific, we do API integration and validation. So there are templates almost identical to what you see here, where you can pull the data with Spreadsheet Server. You can write it back in, fully automated validation areas to let you know that what you're writing back is absolutely the only information you can. Final approval processes to make sure that you're writing back the data correctly. So simplifying it on the AP side, journal entry, budgets. Again, just like we can pull data from any module, we can write data to any module. That's just a separate conversation. We weren't going to cover that today, but absolutely, yes, we can do that.
Perfect. That's all the questions now. If you have any additional ones, please submit them through the chat.
All right. So I want to address a couple of additional things. Now, again, just like we've talked about working through data in Excel, again, to discover conversion, I want to go back over here to my tab that I was building reports on, and I want to show you what it looks like to insert what we call a query into an Excel spreadsheet. Remember, I mentioned a discover report, ultimately what it turns into is a query. Now, what is a query? What does it look like? How do you use them? Well, if I go back to the build a template here for a second, those additional formulas that are in that formula column there, the query side, is where we're going to start diving deeper into that discover, conversion, and query capability. Now, you'll notice there are different formulas there. One says query value, one says query detail. Now, the difference between a query value and a GL value, it's not really a lot, other than it just means you're going outside of the GL. You're not going to start with an account number or a company number. You're going to start with a check number, vendor name, and related parameters. So you'll notice when I click on the query value column, it's just a little bit different. That query value formula, there are no defaulted parameters here. That's because every module functions different than the next. So when you select a query, that's where the parameters will sit. We'll demonstrate that. Let me just describe the formulas a little more, and then we'll jump into that area. So the query value formula works very similar to the GL. It gives you a summarized total that you drill into. Now, as you can imagine, the formula that says detail, panel changes just a little bit, but what this formula does, it allows you to start at the detail level. So instead of drilling down into the detail, how about if we just pull the detail right into the template? I'll walk you through the second formula. You've got an idea of how this one works because it's going to be summarized. Let me pull the detailed version and you'll see the differences. Now, under the detailed formula, you'll notice there's an area for a query name. Now, that means I'm going to go grab the query. Now, as an example, that means you'll go grab the converted discover report and pull it into the template. So this query name area, you'll notice there's a folder just to the right of that. When I click on it, it's going to take me out to a folder structure. Now, this folder structure is inside of your environment. It's not in the cloud. It's not in global software. You will control the folders listed here. You will control the names and the content. Now, the folder just takes you where you're storing the queries. We can set that as a defaulted location, which is what I've got here. You'll notice there are queries that say AP, AR, maybe even completely separate connections. I mentioned we can pull more than just Oracle data. So you will notice JD Edwards. You'll notice that there's just a lot of different databases here. If I scroll down a little further, SAP, even Salesforce information. Now, more importantly, I have an Oracle folder. If I double click on it, this is what queries look like. From the end user in Excel, they're just a name. They have a .edq at the end. You don't even have to worry about that. That defaults there when you create them. Again, we'll show you how that's done. Right now, we're going to show you how to use them. Now, to double click on one, that will pull in the parameters related directly with that query. AR aging information. Now, we have no limit on how a query is built or how it functions. You can cross multiple modules if you want. So if you want to assign AP into a purchase order relation, you absolutely can. When we get into the query creation, we'll address that. Right now, all I'm doing is inserting a query into Excel. Now, row versus column, very similar to the function on the GL. You select how you want to lay that out. Now, there's two additional steps related to that. Right at the top part of the panel, you'll notice it says include column headings. Well, that's the detail that you see inside of the drill down. All those different descriptions, you want those in the template. Starting cell range or table. Well, what this means is that you just need to pick where you want the data to start. Now, I'm just going to use the starting cell. Typically, what you would build is a range or a table into the spreadsheet. That way you can just refresh the information. For simplicity purposes, I'm going to skip that and just pick a starting cell so you can see how the formula works. Now, the starting cell, all I have to know is the cell reference. Right now, it's on A20. I want the detail to start below the parameters because they're going to be listed here, just like you see here. Then there's going to be a space in a formula. So I'm going to want that detail down below that. Now, there's about 10 or 12 here. There's going to be a space with the formula. So I'm going to pick about cell A35. Now, I can change that in a few seconds, but I have to pick just an initial starting point. Now, by hitting insert, remember, I picked cell A35, so I want the detail to start on 34. I've skipped one too many lines, but if you'll notice inside of the formula, there's that same reference. I'm just going to make it cell A34. Now, you will notice no detail has populated in the template. All we've inserted are the parameters. Now, if you've got a formula in parameters, you can always drill down onto it. So there's that additional detail. But as I mentioned, I don't want to have to drill into it. I want to see all of this right in my template. So to do that, one additional function. There is a Generate Reports button. By selecting that option, you'll see where it says Selected Detailed Report. I've selected this report, and now I want the detail for it. So by selecting that option, you're going to notice in a few seconds, there is all that data right inside of my template. Now, the difference between this report and that account inquiry report or some of the other examples that we'll get to here today is that I put in some charts and graphs, some colors and some borders. I can go in here and go to the data tab and I can apply the filters. I can put a fancy little run button and hide the formula like I did on that account inquiry. Again, this is the starting point of how you actually build in Excel. So however far you want to take it, it's ultimately up to the user. You don't have to have all those other functions. You can have it so you just have to go to the tab and re-trigger or re-update that by just hitting the Selected Detailed Report option. Now, if I go through and format this, well, I want this column here to be a dollar value. I want this to be a percentage because it's a discount. You only have to do that one time. You don't have to do it every time. The formatting that you create inside of this template will stick every time you update it. So again, one simple setup will now allow you to be able to keep updating these reports just like I did here under the account inquiry. I don't have to go back to the reformatting option. It's automatically there. So that is how you insert a query into an Excel spreadsheet. Now, we're going to get deeper into this. We're going to talk about how you create and build queries, but ultimately, that's what it looks like to an Excel user. There is no additional understanding other than Excel that they have to have. A few functions from the spreadsheet server ribbon, which we train you on all of that, will get that individual up and running pretty quickly. Questions and comments, again, please submit those to the chat box. Glenn, do we have any additional comments or questions at this time?
I haven't seen any new ones come in at this point, Kevin.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's dive a little deeper here. I want to show you one more option on the build a template, and then we're going to get into how queries are created. So I've got some additional tabs here, AP, fixed assets, purchase orders. I'm not going to go through every one, but I just want you to understand there's no module that's off limits to us. I'm going to go to the AP tab for a second, and notice there's the formula, there's the parameters, here's my data. Now, again, as far as you want to take it from a formatting perspective, but what I want to do is go back to the build a template, or I can even do that under the formula assistant. Either one will accomplish that. What the formula assistant does is it allows you to be able to see all the different parameters that you're using. Description, operating unit. The list here is what the list is that's over here in the upper left-hand side. And these are the parameters that I'm using. But what if I want to modify this layout? What if I want to pull less data? Maybe this report is great for one of our AP folks, but it's not great for someone else. They don't need all of that information. Well, you'll notice there's a modify layout option. By selecting that, you'll notice this little panel that appears on the screen, sort of a sub-panel, if you will, that has all of the fields that are being used in this report. Well, I can modify those right here on the screen. So the checkbox means it's just being included. So if I want to remove things like, I don't need the line amount, I don't want the invoice, I don't want the line number, you just start removing it. Notice it drops them to the bottom. It doesn't delete them out of the query or the report. It just removes them from pulling that data into the template. So if I hit the OK button here, you'll notice it really doesn't change anything. All the same parameters are here, and I'm just going to hit Insert. Now, on the formula itself, if I highlight it, you'll notice at the end it says Layout. That's something new because I've just made a custom layout here within the spreadsheet. Now, if I update this, I want you to notice the line number and all the other parameters that I unchecked to not be with the other fields I used, they're going to automatically be removed. So going up to that detailed report option, if I hit detailed report, notice line number's been removed. So now, if I go to the right, the two selections that I made simply don't even now appear inside the Excel spreadsheet. So I've just removed fields that weren't needed for someone else. So a query can be used in multiple ways. Now, if I want to go back and put that in the template again, because I didn't want to remove it for that individual, the removing of the layout will absolutely do that. Reinsert that into the spreadsheet. And if I re-trigger that calculation, you'll notice line number now reappears, as does all the other information that I may have deleted from that query. So again, just another way to use modification. You don't have to go into this other component, which we're going to show. Individuals can modify fields right inside the Excel template. They don't have to have any additional knowledge to do that. That modify button will allow a simple selection and modification. Now, let's take it from Excel and take it into a query. I've used that term a lot here, sort of in the middle of this call today. What is a query, and what does it mean when it relates to Discover conversion? Because that's an important component. Now, one of the things I will describe here, I mentioned there are different license levels that drive Spreadsheet Server. It's one install. One install can get you right back. One install can get you distribution. One install can get you Discover conversion and FSG conversion and all the functions that we provide. They're not separate installations or components to do that. It's different license levels. So we have a Platinum, a Gold, and a Limited. Now, the Platinum level is the highest level license. The Gold is the middle of the road. The Gold is the person I've shown you here today. They're building reports. They're using the Build a Template Formula Assistant. They're executing under the Generate Reports button. They can even distribute. That's the most popular license level we have. Now, the Limited, just like it describes, they have limited functions. They're really just someone who consumes a report to use it. So like that in Count Inquiry, they'll just open it up, drill down, update parameters. They can't build or distribute right back or any of the other functions. They really have limited capabilities. Now, the Platinum level license user is the most robust user. They have access to everything. They have the ability to go out and convert reports such as Discover and modify, add, adjust queries if they need to. That gives that user access to our Query Designer capability. Now, in the Query Designer, not only can you design your own queries, but you can convert. Let me close out of this for a second and show you this is the Query Designer when you open it up. Now, the Query Designer, as I mentioned, is using Discover conversion. Now, whether it's a Discover report or maybe you have other query tools out there that you want to use, maybe other tools that you have reports built into, we're certainly going to try to cover a lot of that here. But again, high-level discussion today, more focused on your particular situation. We'll reach out or just let us know if you want to dive deeper into your situation. Now, in the Build a Template, on the left-hand side, there's a column for queries. That's the same formula or folder structure, I should say, that you saw inside the Build a Template a few moments ago when I inserted a query. So if I want to go back down to Oracle, or if I want to go anywhere in the system, let's just AP, I know these are some Oracle queries, AP invoice line details. I'm going to open that query up so you can see what it looks like. Now, when I double click on a query, you'll notice we'll populate with some different information here. I'm going to walk you through these 4 distinct panels. For those of you on the call today, keep in mind not everyone is going to get into this area. This is limited to a Platinum level user only, and as you're going to see here in a few moments, someone who's a little bit more technical other than just Excel knowledge. Now, with inside of the Query Designer, the 4 distinct panels that populate, notice the bottom right-hand side. This is Select or SQL. Now, our product uses Select or SQL statements. Even on the GL component, we just pre-map it for you. Now, on the Discoverer side, that's where we take advantage of the SQL or Select statements that are out there. We can copy and paste a Select statement into the bottom right-hand corner, and that Discover report has now been converted. Once it's in the Query Designer, you could even enhance that functionality because we have the ability to add what we call smart parameters. Now, I've called them parameters in the Build a Template. They're called smart parameters ultimately with the system. I'm going to just show you that. You'll notice it says smart parameter over here in the criteria column. I'm going to connect that here in just a moment. So the bottom right, on this particular query, you don't have to know SQL because we have an auto-generate feature that allows the SQL to automatically be created inside of this area. On the Discover conversion, we would uncheck this box. You could go through, then go in here and modify, copy, paste, add whatever SQL you would like here from other tools that are out there, certainly Discover, as I mentioned. And if I recheck the auto-generate button, you'll notice it'll automatically populate what I just deleted. So the bottom right is very important for Discover. or any other queries or SQL statements you have out there, but outside of that, it's not a required knowledge. Because when I build a query from scratch, it automatically generates the information in that panel. Now, right above that are parameters. The parameters, as I mentioned, also known as smart parameters, this is what an individual sees inside the Excel spreadsheet, or more importantly, inside the build-it template when they're building a report. That's the connection between the build-it template and the query designer. Now, you'll notice an ID column 1 through 6. If you go over here to the bottom left, you'll notice criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They don't have to be in order here, but that's the order they are as far as parameters. So in order for it to be a parameter, it has to be what we call a field. I'll show you where fields come from in just a few moments, but we're working with what we've selected. Remember, I modified the fields in the build-it template under that modify area. So when you build a query, you can have a lot of parameters, if not all of them there, and then when you build a report, you can select which ones need to appear in the spreadsheet when you build it. So again, a query can have multiple functions. Now, to add a parameter, you just go to the area where they're not being used. So if you want the line number, line description, you just highlight it, right-click, and that's where we're introducing that term called a smart parameter. Again, in Excel, it's just called a parameter. But by selecting that option, you'll notice it will add line number as number 7, and it automatically updates down in the bottom right-hand side. If you want to remove a field or a parameter, all you have to do is highlight it, hit the little red X in that case on that side. Over here, you would just right-click, and then you can delete it. You can delete the field. You can even change the order, move the field up and down. This is the order that it appears inside the Excel template. Now, in order to add a field, you need to have an understanding of the table structure itself. This is the most important area. Now, I'm going to relate this to a discover conversion in just a second and what the table structure means to a select statement when you copy it in. Now, right now, I've got tables and I have joins. So to build a query, you have to know what tables and what joins are needed. On a discover conversion, you do not. So if you want to build the SQL or select automatically, you'll need to know this area in the upper left-hand side. Now, the fields sit inside the tables. So if you want to add business group ID, notice when I double-click on it, it adds it to the bottom. If you were to drag and drop it, it'll put it right in the order or spot that you want it to be. And then you can even go and re-alias this. If you don't like soft coding, which is what I grabbed and dropped in there, if you right-click on it, you can add a new alias than what the field itself was when you started, making that a little more relevant to the end user in Excel. So in this case, this is the guts, if you will, or the deepest part of the product. This is where we're talking about the ability to grab data from any module, combining different modules together, even being able to go out and grab different data connections. It's not just Oracle specific. Now, I want to close this query for a second because I want to show you a discover or converted query so you also understand what that will look like inside of this query designer. I'm going to click on a discover query. Now notice, looks a little bit different. I have tables, but I don't have joins. I've got just a few fields that I'm using, and they actually equate to the same number of parameters that I have. Because in a select or SQL statement from a discover report, I don't have to have the tables in order to convert it. I can copy and paste this and run it directly right inside the query designer, and ultimately it turns it into a query for Excel. But with our functionality to be able to add smart parameters, which are the parameters I mentioned here, that's where you would need to know the table structure. Now, I only have to pull the tables in that are required for that parameter. So I'm using 3 parameters that come from 2 different tables. You would select the table you need. You would double click on the field that you want to eventually make a parameter, and that's the extent of the knowledge. You don't have to know the joins. The joins are built into the select SQL statement you copied in. So in this case, I'm using the 3 fields from the 2 different tables as I mentioned. I make those exactly the same parameters I'm using. That's not a requirement, but it's optional. You don't have to have parameters in order to convert a discover report. It just makes our product more enhanced for you and that report, because now you can filter specifically off of that information. So again, I just wanted to address what a discover converted report looks like. We come on site, we help you convert the discover reports. We sit down with you, we'll convert as many as we can with you. We have an Oracle practice director who is very, very versed. He goes out, he helps. I know he's converted as many, in the training sessions that we provide are from anywhere from 2 to 5 days. They've converted upwards of 100 different discover reports. It's really very simple in order to do that. And then you just insert them into Excel. Once they're converted, they're always converted. So that's the Query Designer. Again, there's a lot more functionality here. You can always test them. You can lock them down. We can limit the amount of data that's being returned. A lot of different ways in order to see this information. As I also mentioned, just so you can see, I can test the data here. If I hit all records, that's going to go out and give me all the records related to this Discover Converted report. That'll allow me to see the results container so I can understand exactly what this is pulling in. Did it convert correctly? This is exactly what I need. I now can deploy that out there so someone can use it in an Excel spreadsheet. 100,000-foot overview. We get more detailed on customized demonstrations. We can certainly entertain questions about what you've seen here inside of the Query Designer today. Submit those through, the Q&A box. Glennon, any questions at this point related to anything that we've talked about here today, which also includes the functions that we just discussed?
Kevin, there was one concerning training, but I think you just answered, or you at least touched on it just now, but if you wanted to speak to that in a little bit more thoroughly, that's all I think.
Sure, absolutely. The training is, as I mentioned, 2 to 5 days. It's hands-on. 2 days will focus on GL, 3 days focus on Discover conversions and helping you absolutely do that. It gets you to understand how the Query Designer fits in, and then going back and inserting that into the Excel spreadsheet via the Build It template. Those days can be modified if they need to, but just understand that if we just don't turn the keys to the car over and you have to figure it out, we're certainly going to help you. We have a lot of pre-built content already out there as far as queries are concerned, well over 200 on the Oracle space. So there's a lot of information, a lot of resources for you. And then there's even a 24/7 support desk and folks like our Oracle Practice Director who understand Oracle and can help you build queries. And if you have questions, you can certainly run those through him and he'll help you in case you get stuck in any certain area. So just to sort of recap now, we've talked about FSG conversion. We've talked about Discover conversion. We've talked about what those two look like in Excel now. Notice I'm still in the same workbook. You don't have to build it that way. But again, it's other examples that we have. You can now do anything you want with the data because it's live and refreshable and read-only inside the Excel template. For those that were asking about write-backs, certainly now there's a write-back capability where we can push the data back. If you find you need to do mass changes to your information, absolutely can do that. That's typically a separate presentation. But now I want to focus on the last component before we conclude the call today, which is the distribution feature. You've now converted reports, you've now modified and created. How do you send this information or these reports to individuals who may need to use them, but they don't have the spreadsheet server access? Well, that distribution tab that I've just clicked on here allows you to be able to do that. Now, as I mentioned, it's all part of the same ribbon, same install. We can turn all of this off, sort of like a la carte, if you will. We can control what each user can do. I'll walk you through how you add a distribution, and that will tie everything together. Now, there's a button here that says Maintain Specs that if I click on it, you'll see this panel that appears on the screen. Now, the panel will walk you through how to set up a distribution. Just like a report, once distribution's set up, it's always set up. So you answer a few questions such as, I want a file save this. You can email it. Notice when I select that option, there's an email tab that appears. If you want to leave it in Excel, you can. CSV, HTML, PDF output, absolutely. Those conversions happen whenever you distribute. To being able to modify parameters within a template. Remember, if you modify parameters, it'll update the report, and therefore one template can cover all the different versions that you need. So if it's a converted FSG, as an example, I can select that same report, profit and loss. I can make a cell reference into the parameter I want to update, in this case, the department number. I want that to be Department 410, and I also want that to be for a different month, year, time period, or it could be an account number that you're changing. These updates occur whenever you distribute, so now Department 410 for the month of July will be the information that the end user will receive. Select what you want to send. I want to send that profit and loss. I want to send the account inquiry report. This is building one attachment. Each report that I selected will be a tab in that workbook. It will remove all the other tabs that don't need to be sent. Now, if you need to add an extra layer of protection here as far as it's password sensitive, its data doesn't need to be changed, it could be financial information that doesn't need to be exposed to anyone else, check the boxes here. On that miscellaneous tab, the ability to open the workbook and or modify it with passwords, absolutely. Again, just an added level of security. Now, if you're sending this report to someone who doesn't have a license, remember this is license driven, you would convert the formulas out of the spreadsheet. Now, by converting the formulas, the live data and the refresh and the drill down go away. Now, where it says global only as a selection, that's the option we're doing. It's converting it to back to Excel, just like it was before Spreadsheet Server was even introduced. Now, all the Excel formulas will stay. You can remove all formulas if you want, or you can just leave the formulas, which means the individual who opens it up has to have the ribbon. Recalculate before you send it. You absolutely want all the journal entries and postings to occur, so you want to make sure that spreadsheet updates while you send. As I mentioned, the email side, we connect into your existing email application. So when I send this email, it's going to say it's from you, not from Global Software Spreadsheet Server. It will go through your sent items, and if someone responds, it will go to your inbox. Now, just like you create an email today, type in the subject line, type down here in the panel, and the last step is just to hit the push button. By doing that, that will insert that new line right into the template. I can modify it here in Excel, or I can just copy and paste and send it down the spreadsheet. I need to send out more versions of this template, so I don't have to go back through that build a template every time. So if I need to send Glennon a report, I can. If I need to send Adam a report, you just start building out your distribution list. You can change all the different options. Glennon needs a PDF document. Adam's not a user, so I'm going to convert him. And then I'm going to change some of the parameters here. So Department 420 and Department 430, they still need the same month, but Adam doesn't need the account inquiry. So you're building out that standardized distribution. Once this is set up, it's always set up. So now it becomes just a matter of how do you distribute the information you've established. Well, there's an option to distribute all of the reports. As you'll notice here, I can distribute all, which are all 4 lines. I can do a selected option, which means I can just distribute the ones I select, lines 4 and 6 if I need to. But we also have a scheduling capability. That means that we can schedule reports to be distributed on any time constraint, down to minutes, days, weeks, months. If you want to send a report every single minute of every single day, it will automatically do that. You won't have to trigger it manually, as I'm showing you under that distribute option. So again, in conclusion, the distribution comes with the product. So from start to finish, modified, created, and distributed, start in Excel, stay in Excel. This is the conversation that Glennon and I had prepared for you all today. Again, we can always be more specific on the functions that we may want to dive a little deeper into, but I will pull up Glennon's information here so you can see that on the screen. If you would like to reach out to us and receive more information, absolutely, and we'll certainly take more questions if you have them at this time.
Kevin, I did have one question come in, and I know Tiffany will probably take over and she may have some additional ones, but can the parameters be dynamic? And that question came in while we were looking at the build a template, or sorry, while we were looking at the distribution manager. So that may have been specific to that, but you probably just want to talk in generalities.
So as far as parameters, they can be created, modified, and adjusted in a number of ways. Certainly through the distribution, they can be dynamic in the fact that you have them referenced as far as formulas. It's like some of our customers use macros to create dates. On the date side, you can use the now function so the date automatically populates. You can have cells, let's say you have January in the first month and the next month needs to be February, or a rolling 12. You can use the +1, if you will. So it's going to reference the previous cell. So when you update one parameter, it updates all the remaining parameters. There are so many ways to sort of address that and demonstrate, but it's really just up to you how that needs to be done. But yes, they can be dynamic as much as you can make them. Thank you all for listening to today. I know it's a lot to take in. It's a little overwhelming to see all that in a short period of time. But Glennon's information's on the screen. Reach out to us. Let us know if you have other specific questions you think of later. We'll certainly answer those. And again, more specifically, we can jump on a particular demonstration for you and your team and show you how this would fit in with your organization.
Thank you so much. We don't have any more questions. Again, I would like to say thank you, Glennon and Kevin, for your presentation. This concludes our e-learning session. Everyone, have a great afternoon.